Our event is very aptly called A Vote for the Establishment is a Vote for Genocide. It needs no further explanation. There's no need to explain or talk about the intentional devastation and destruction that has been caused in Palestine. We have, of course, all witnessed the brutal murder, in fact, genocide of over 30,000 people, and that includes, of course, women and children. For too long now, our Muslim communities here in Newcastle and across the UK have supported the establishment parties. Ashman asked the question, what have you gained for this support? What have you gotten back? Even after the illegal war in Iraq, led by Tony Blair and George Bush, our communities still gave the Labour Party their vote and kept their faith in the Labour Party. When Jeremy Corbyn came along and came into power of the Labour Party, we did all kind of feel a glimmer of hope. This brief glimmer was once again quickly extinguished. Enough is enough. After a recent event unfolding from the 7th of October, it's fair to say that the Labour Party and Conservative Party are complicit in genocide, and they have facilitated genocide. It's time to rise, take to the ballot box, and this time we implore you to do the right thing. We will no longer be silenced in this upcoming election. We need to make sure that the establishment hears us. Thank you. Just a polite notice, there will be an opportunity for questions. We won't be able to give you the opportunity to pose questions after each speaker, but if you have questions, can I politely request you to send them through to the PalesTyne WhatsApp number? So that is the number that you all used to register for the event. And then they will be passed over and we will look through the questions towards the end. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Arshad Ali, who is the chair of Stop the War Bradford. He's previously travelled with George and Yvonne to Gaza on numerous occasions, I do believe. Is that right, Arshad? The first time was in 2009 as part of an aid convoy delivered by land, air and sea. They went to break the siege of Gaza and successfully did so. Arshad played a pivotal role in defeating the Labour Party in Bradford West during the 2012 by-election and helped get our George elected too. So without further ado, Arshad, if you'd like to come up, please. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much indeed. Assalamu alaikum, good evening, everybody. My name is Arshad Ali, as I've been introduced. Can I thank everybody here today who's been part of the organisation? I know how difficult things can be when you're organising and putting on a public event like this, so well done and thank you very much all for that. Before I continue, can I say congratulations to George Galloway on yet another historic victory over the establishment parties, genocide supporting parties in Arshad just a few weeks ago. George is a man who has a proven track record going back decades. A greatest supporter, there's never been a greater supporter for the Palestinian cause, never been a greater supporter for the Kashmiri cause, or whether it's Rohingyas or wherever oppression occurs in the world, we see one man voice all over, and that's Mr. Galloway. So well done, George, on that. Once again, a massive victory in Rochdale. Bradford's losses, Rochdale's gain, I'm sure. We tend to be creatures of habit, don't we? We tend to vote for, whoever we voted for. As creatures of habit, we can tend to eat the same kind of foods, we drink the same kind of drink, we wear the same kind of clothes, and we go to the same kind of places, and we vote for the same kind of political parties. Sometimes out of blind loyalty, because your family or your friends or you've always voted for a particular party and you belong to that tribe and you feel compelled to just go on voting, in spite of what might be happening. Sometimes it's loyalty to friends or family who may be already in the Labour Party. And trust me, I know all about that, coming from Bradford, the birthplace of Labour Party, where brotherism, rife, and ugly head shows up every now and again at every election. We've got to do something different. We can't just endlessly support these genocide-supporting parties, whether they support for Iraq, whether they attack Iraq or Afghanistan. There's a certain amount of people who feel compelled to still vote for the Labour Party, in spite of the million dead and the millions who maybe become refugees, in spite of countries becoming completely destroyed by war, but some people will still keep on voting for the party that they've always voted for. We've got to start changing that mindset. We've got to do something different. As the people of Rochdale have done, they took a brave stand, they did something different. And I respect and I extend my congratulations to the people of Rochdale for that as well. It was, I think, Henry Ford, the CEO of the Ford Motor Company, who once said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Yeah. Though I don't think he said that in a Bradford accent. Professor Einstein went a little further and he said, the definition of madness is to do the same thing again and again and expect a different outcome. And I'm not going to argue with Professor Einstein. We've got to do something different. So at the next elections, whether it's local elections or parliamentary elections, I would ask for you to support the independent. If you don't have an independent candidate in your area, become one. That's what democracy is. We don't need to go behind the Labour or Party or the Tory Party or whichever. Democracy is power in the hands of the people. And every one of you, there may be capabilities and abilities and the passion for you to stand up and become a candidate. If you feel like, and I don't, that the current Labour Party isn't the working class party that it was once, under people like Keir Hardie, who became the first leader, the first member of Parliament back in 1893, was it? And now we come to the current Labour Party, where we have another Keir Starmer, but is a self-confessed Zionist and a genocide-supporting puppet. And so we've got to do something differently. We've got to stand independent candidates all over the country. As I said, if there isn't a candidate that you can vote for, independent candidate that you can vote for, become one. If you're looking for a working class people that represents the grievances and the needs of the working class people, and if there isn't one, join the Workers' Party of Britain, where George is an MP. And if there isn't one in your constituency, become one. Apply to become a member, become a candidate, and show the establishment parties that the power lies in the hands of the ordinary people. And I think most of us have had enough of the manipulation that has occurred over the last few decades. We feel like we have no power. Everything that gets done in our name, but we have no power. We get lied to. We have to hold our nose and vote for the same parties that are ruling over us again and again, and we have no choice. Well, George has proven that you can stand independent. And if you're on the hook and the such and what's right, then you will resonate with people. And like-minded people are looking for someone who can stand, who has the passion, and who can stand and speak and eloquently speak about the things that are important to them. So I urge everybody to consider voting for voting against Labour and the Tories.
To make sure everyone's paying attention, make sure they're paying attention.
And support independently minded, strong voices, independent people in the community. Now, I was asked today to, I think it's because one of the speakers cancelled, so I was asked to stand in and introduce Yvonne Ridley, and it's a pleasure to do so. She's an award-winning journalist and an author. She has worked on Fleet Street, and apart from that, she's worked in local, national and international media. You'll probably know her from your television screens, where she presented television shows on Islam Channel, Press TV, Al Jazeera, One of the ones you might be familiar with is The Agenda, which is a news and current affairs programme, which I was found particularly interesting. She, as Chair said earlier on, she travelled all the way to Gaza by road and broke the siege of Gaza, where I think 400 people were on that convoy, together with Mr. Galloway. She's been a lifetime supporter of the Kashmiri cause and the Rohingya cause. She was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for her work on humanitarian matters, just in 2020, I believe. She's a local girl. She's born just down the road from here, so you're a Newcastle girl. So you've been born here, so this is your hometown. So yes, of course, it was a pleasure for me to introduce this next speaker. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and give a warm Newcastle welcome to Dr. Yvonne Ridley.
Brothers, sisters, comrades, Salam alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Let's remember why I am here, why you're here, why George was elected Rochdale's MP, and why I want you to help me get elected as the independent MP for Newcastle Central and West. We are here tonight for the people of Palestine, and in particular the heroes of the Gaza siege. Israel has caged them, starved them, bombed them, tortured them, and then blamed them after decades in the world's most notorious open-air prison. They killed more than 40,000 Palestinians. The majority were women and children, in the most documented but the most denied genocide in history. We must never forgive and we must never forget what happened after October 7. And by the way, let's put some context on October the 7th. It was never the start of something. It was the continuation in a brutal occupation which started long before anyone had ever heard of Hamas. Brutally take homes and lands away from proud nations, push them into the edges, force millions into permanent refugee camps across the region as the Israelis did in 1948. Dehumanize them, trick them with the Oslo Peace Accords that enabled Israel to get away with stealing more land grabs and illegal settlements. Keep them locked away in the overcrowded Gaza Strip. Arrest their children for throwing stones. Try these kids in front of military courts, which is also illegal under international law. And what does anyone expect? Humans kept chained and oppressed for close to 8 decades will one day bite the hand of the brutal jailer. This is Psychology 101. This is the simple rule of cause and effect. How many of our leaders have ever tried walking in the shoes of the Palestinians? I have. George has. Many people in this room have. There's a few here who are Palestinians. And I salute each and every one of you for your heroic resistance. We are blessed with your presence, alhamdulillah. Sadly, there's no evidence of heroic resistance on the benches of Westminster, apart from a few exceptions like George Galloway, Jeremy Corbyn, the late, great and sorely missed Tony Benn, and the Jewish MP Gerald Kaufman, who died before Starmer could kick him so unceremoniously out of the party Gerald Kaufman served so well. Jewish voices like Gerald Kaufman's have been silenced. Jews daring to criticize Zionism have been silenced. Jews daring to question Israel's brutal occupation have been silenced, disappeared, and airbrushed from the Labour Party. More than 40 were hounded out. Some died before they could seek justice. We all know that the dead can't speak, so allow me to do it for them. Let's just have a look at Keir Starmer's record. Let's remember that in 2011, while he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer was asked by a leading human rights group and lawyers to issue an arrest warrant for the former Zionist Foreign Minister, Tzipi Livni. Remember her?
Yeah.
The warrant was over allegations of serious war crimes. A UN report at the time stated numerous serious violations of international law were committed by Israel during operations between 2008 and 2009. These included the direct targeting and arbitrary killing of Palestinian civilians. The very same Tzipi Livni declared, literally spitting in the face of the UN, "I am a lawyer, but I am against the law, and against international law in particular." Let's just think about this. Did Starmer, a lawyer himself, armed with UN reports and the submissions of senior lawyers in the UK and human rights experts, do the right thing and uphold the rule of law? No. What Starmer did was block the arrest warrant and by default enabled the Zionist regime to get off scot-free, ensuring they could continue their genocidal onslaught against innocent Palestinians to this very day. The very same unprincipled man who voted against ceasefire while the rest of us were watching on in horror as genocide plays out on our screens before our very eyes. Poor Chi, your current MP, like a rabbit caught in the headlights, she didn't vote for ceasefire. She did something far worse, in my view. She took the coward's way out and abstained. How can you abstain when genocide is the issue? What sort of humanity is at play when this woman sits on the fence, knowing full well the sheer reign of terror and mass extermination carried out by Israel against innocent civilians? She watches the same news channels that we all watch. She heard the compelling evidence put forward by the South African lawyers at the International Court. Her verdict? To say nout and abstain. Chianwara, here tonight we collectively say this to you. You have the stains of Palestinian blood on your hands. Shame on you. She is just another small part of the typical UK, EU and US axis of colonial imperialism that would rather impose more sanctions on Iran and the brave Houthis of Yemen. Under international law, we all have a legal obligation to stop the genocide. The Houthis have killed no one in their righteous attempt to interrupt Israel's trade routes from this small Arab nation, itself facing a humanitarian disaster after years of the US-Saudi bombardment, has proved what a giant of humanity and empathy the people of Yemen are. Of course, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was descended from this part of Arabia and was also sheltered by the descendants of Yemen during his time of struggle, and makes their beloved people to the Prophet, peace be upon him. I mean, we can now see why he loved the people of Yemen. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but to hell with it anyway. The people of Yemen are truly blessed. And while the Houthis have killed not one soul, the Israelis have killed more than 40,000, including nearly 15,000 children, and nearly 80,000 have been seriously injured. Babies are being born to malnourished mothers and then die days later. And in flagrant breach of international law, the Zionist armed forces are literally destroying hospitals and murdering doctors and surgeons. Once again, Labour sides with the UK government, the EU and the US in failing to stand up against these breaches of international law by Israel, and prefers instead to pick on the small guys, trying their best to do the right thing. Alhamdulillah for the Yemeni people. Look, I don't want to bore you with history here this evening, but if we fail to learn from the past, only Allah alone can help us in our future. Starmer's policy on supporting the Zionist regime goes right back to the first Labour MP, Ramsay MacDonald. Yes, it was the British Labour Party who in the 1930s told the Zionist Jewish Agency that Labour supported their plans of apartheid in employment. Let me read you an excerpt of MacDonald's policy. With regard to the Jewish Agency's declared policy that all works carried out shall be deemed to be a matter of principle, that only Jewish labour shall be employed, my government does not in any way challenge your right to formulate and endorse such a policy. So right back before World War II, the very first Labour government in the UK was aiding and abetting the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. A leopard never changes its spots. Labour cannot be trusted. Labour was the Zionist party of Britain 100 years ago. It is now also the Zionist party of genocide. Shame on them. The proud and fiercely independent people of Newcastle Central and West now have an exciting choice. A choice that for once offers you a true passionate Geordie voice in Westminster. You can have an MP who is more interested in towing the party line, who will at all costs prop up a Labour government where Starmer can keep U-turning without sanction, or you can have an MP who, along with other independents, will be a loud, honest voice, consistently challenging the government to be brave and bold and fix the mess our city and our country is in. The late, great Tony Benn once said, there are two types of politicians, signposts and weather vanes. Weather vanes like Chi, who is unable to speak out because the Labour whips punish anyone who fails to toe the Starmer Tory light line, or someone like me, who has been a signpost all my life, firm and staunch in what I believe, not changing like Chi, who U-turns as often as the wind changes direction. No, folks, with me you'll get principled politics, real social justice, workers' rights, restoring the dignity to the NHS Nye Bevan dreamed of, and fighting day in and day out until Palestine is free. I have been a woman of strong principles and conviction my entire life. I do not change like the wind. I will never kowtow to vested interests. I will be a champion for Newcastle and a champion for Palestine. Newcastle urgently needs policing for the people, not policing that targets the people. I want to know why in recent months the people who have been arrested at Palestinian protests are all people of colour. Is that coincidence? No. I want to find out. So take heed, anyone here from Northumbria Police. We're watching you. Start locking up the real crooks with their offshore accounts, robbing the nation of over 15 billion per year, instead of disproportionately stopping our youth just because of the colour of their skin. West Streeting wants more privatisation for the NHS, the same path taken by Tony Blair. Labour just cannot learn one single lesson. Healthcare should never enable private companies to make grotesque profits while our waiting lists grow year on year. Labour continue to peddle the Tory lie, we don't have the money. Elect me and I will show them where the money is. 12 billion sent to the Ukraine so far, most of it in arms and weapons, the very weaponry that gets destroyed the next week by Russian missiles. Every Geordie can work this one out. We might as well withdraw 12 billion from the Bank of England and burn it on our barbecues. While our hospitals and schools are at crisis point, Labour and the Tories prefer to line the pockets of international arms dealers. This is an obscenity. Look at something as fundamental as water. Without fresh, clean water, we literally die. Yet Labour props up this failed Tory policy and refuses to nationalise it. Shame on them. Here in Newcastle, I did some digging about Northumbrian water. It's owned by a Hong Kong tycoon and an American equity firm. Oh, God. They've just paid out 159 million to shareholders. Meanwhile, they increase our water bills and then fork out £250,000 in fines for polluting our rivers and seas. Enough is enough. I will speak up about this until Geordies retake control of this very basic human right. Clean, fresh water without bills that break the bank. Labour are now U-turning on a national care service, while our disabled children are not getting the care package they need, and while our elders are being forced to sell every asset they saved in their hard-working lives. to cover social care. Labour applaud the fact we spend millions targeting Yemen, a country already facing a humanitarian crisis. Whether it is the Tories or Labour, we all know this is the politics of perversion. Sunak and Starmer, the cheerleaders of immoral depravity, and who suffers while they all spend the money on wars that simply should not be fought? It is us, the hard-working folk of Newcastle and every other town across this land. As your MP, I will, along with other strong independent voices, fight your corner loudly, day in, day out. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to restore loud voices of honesty and principle back into the House of Commons, restoring the legacy of a giant like Tony Benn. Thank you. I was so excited there, I forgot one of the objectives of tonight. I have a great team of people around me. I think everyone knows Mas, who is going to be my election agent. But perhaps the headline tonight is my campaign manager, and I would like him to step up and come forward. I'm not sure he's told Keir Starmer yet, but I think this is as good as a resignation gets.
I wasn't going to do a speech. However, Deepa made me write one last night. So
Homework,
yeah. So seeing I've wrote one, I better read it out. So I'm going to tell you a little story, so bear with me, all right? My name's Councillor Shamel Rahman. Well, at least for the next 2 weeks anyway. I was a Labour Newcastle City Councillor for Monument Ward in the city centre. I've had the honour and privilege to serve this community for over 5 years. I've been a pro-Palestinian activist for over 30 years, ever since the Oslo Peace Accords. I even remember boycotting Israeli tomatoes on my pizza when I was a young teenager. That was even before BDS was invented. I was up for re-election in the May local election. Sadly, I've been blocked from standing by the Labour Party due to my Palestinian activities.
shame.
And what was my crime? Why have they stopped us for standing and representing the community in the city I love? Because I called for a ceasefire to stop the genocide, the starvation, the eradication of the Palestinian people in Gaza. I've had 6 months of slurs, slander, allegations, bullying and personal attacks, both from the Labour Party and other activists. I've had complaints to my employer, the council, the Labour Party and other groups I've been involved with. I've been specifically targeted for my pro-Palestinian views, my religious beliefs and my ethnicity. I was initially blocked by the Labour Party, which produced a 30-page dossier of evidence against me at my appeal. The evidence included letters calling for a ceasefire, petitions I'd organised, letters to Keir Starmer, photographs and videos of me speaking at meetings and demonstrations, sharing a platform with Lindsay German, who's, I believe, is the head of the Stop the War Coalition. Many of the pictures will include people in this room, bizarrely, including praying at the monument and sitting at the monument Is that the best evidence that they could bring of wrongdoing? Really? At my appeal, I unanimously won, only for Newcastle Central and West Executive to step in less than 24 hours later and deselect me. That sums up the corruption of the Labour Party. I'm the only individual in the North East this has happened to. However, the targeting of pro-Palestinian councillors has been prominent across the country. I want to tell you my story, because I think it's extremely important for the Palestinian cause, the people of Newcastle, to hear the truth about the Labour Party. It's absolutely disgusting, it's disgraceful to victimise Palestinian campaigners for the stance on a humanitarian crisis where thousands of people are being killed, including thousands of children. I have helped organise some of the biggest Palestinian demonstrations the North East has ever seen. I've been to national demonstrations where we've nearly had 1 million people on the street. I've helped organise meetings and rallies. I've organised the petition to Newcastle City Council and the questions to Council. Mary was there. She was
I'm your witness.
So was Taj.
Yep, witness.
I better turn over the page. I do not regret a single thing I've done. I wouldn't change a thing I've done. I'm proud of taking a stand for Palestine. This is a moment in history. And I can say I've done everything I can do to support the Palestinian people. I've had my honour, I have my respect, my integrity, my principles. I've not compromised my values, and I always think what my late father would do. And he would stand with the Palestinian people. That's why today I stand with Yvonne Ridley. And I'm really happy that she announced I'm her campaign manager. I didn't leave the Labour Party. The Labour Party left me.
Here.
Palestine wasn't the start, it was the beginning of the end. Now, everything Keir Starmer says I disagree with, whether it's human rights, striking workers, the NHS, junior doctors, healthcare workers, refugees, and everything in between. We need change. To all those who want to change, you need to join this campaign. To all those who are sick of party politics, who are sick of the Labour Party, to all those who are sick of Chion Wara, you need to join this campaign. If you want a pro-Palestinian MP, this is the time, this is the best way. If you want someone who will stand up for Newcastle, Yvonne is that person. To all those who have been campaigning at Chi's office and surgeries, you need to join this campaign. If you really want to make a difference, if you really want to get rid of Chi, this is the best way. To join this campaign and get involved. If you want someone that will fight for you, someone who will fight for human rights, for social justice, liberty, equality, equity, and a fairer society, you need to join this campaign. I'll get this finished at some point. So if we're going to win this general election,
We are.
if we're going to win for Newcastle, if we're going to win for you, we need you. We need the community. We need the people of Newcastle. We need you involved in this campaign. So Chion Wara, listen up, we are coming for you.
Yeah!
McCarthy, the Islamophobic city councillor who still sits on the council, we're coming for you. Kim McGuinness. My boy James Driscoll, he's coming for you. And he's going to win. Susan Dunworth, the wannabe PCC, we're coming for you. Heaton Ward, my sister Chandni Chopra, they're coming for you. So the Labour Party, you're on notice. The community, all of these people in the room, we are coming for you.
Oh wow, that raised the temperature a bit and the velocity in the room, didn't it? Thank you very much to Yvonne and Shamal. So I'm guessing you want to hear the main man speak, or should we just continue with some more speakers and speeches? What would you like?
No, definitely.
I think they want to hear from you rather than me, George. So I'll do my little brief introduction because you're not here to hear what I have to say. So our lovely George, British politician, broadcaster, writer who has served as MP for Rochdale since the 2024 by-election, I do believe in late February. I personally became aware of George after he was expelled from the Labour Party for his outspoken opposition to the 2003 Iraq invasion. It was good that someone had actually been brave enough to stand up and speak up, and that's what caught my attention. George is known to be a staunch critic of Israel and Zionism. He has voiced his unfaltering support for Palestine and Palestinians in the ongoing conflict and during this current genocide. Thank you for doing the right thing, George, and standing on the right side of history. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, George Galloway.
Distinguished elders, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a truly splendid meeting. This is the biggest meeting I think I have ever addressed in Newcastle. Something is happening here. Something big is happening here. And you will always know that you were there at the start. And that will last a long time in your memory. There's something about tonight which is the band coming back together. Not only was the first speaker my election agent when I won the historic Bradford West by-election, but one of my opponents in that by-election, Dawood Islam, is sitting in the front row. And we're all fighting for Yvonne Ridley, who was a visiting speaker for me in that historic by-election. So we're all together here again, many years later, for this great cause. And I feel something of the Bradford West spirit in this room this evening. We have traveled many miles together. I think there are more than have been mentioned that are in the room, that were on the convoys, over and over again, breaking the siege on Gaza. In fact, Yvonne was the first person to break the siege on Gaza. By sea, if I recall. By sea, she embarked upon a far more perilous journey than even our land convoys into Gaza. But they were perilous, all of them. And they were very long ago. which I dwell on because there are still some fools who believe that all of this started on October the 7th last year. If that was true, how come these old people here have been breaking the siege on Gaza year after year after year for decades? The Palestinian people didn't just begin starving on October the 8th, although this is the ugliest, most obscene chapter of a whole chamber of horrors that the Palestinian people have been subjected to. It didn't begin 6 months ago. They were starving when we broke the siege to bring them food. Otherwise, why did we do it? They were without medical help more than a decade ago. Otherwise, why did we bring them medicine? They lacked ambulances. Otherwise, why did we drive ambulances to them 14, 15 years ago? But I'll come back to that. I want to deal with some British issues first. Ash quoted Henry Ford. A wonderful quote. I hadn't heard it before. I usually use the Einstein one. But the Henry Ford one is actually, if the great professor will forgive me, even better. If you could keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. But Henry Ford said something else of note in his long life as an exploiter in the United States. He said of his Ford Model T motor car, the first mass motor car in history, you can have it in any color you like as long as it's black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, isn't that the politics that we have in Britain now? You can vote for one cheek or the other cheek of the same backside as long as they all stand for the same SH1T. Isn't that the truth of it? You can vote Labour and have privatized water owned by a Hong Kong tycoon, or you can vote Tory and have privatized water. I mean, who knew? That again I've learned tonight. A Hong Kong tycoon owns Newcastle's water. Do you remember, those of you old enough, when they started this privatization lark? It was just tell Sid. Just tell Sid we were all going to become little capitalists, buying shares in our own privatized industries that we all owned anyway as public utilities. Who knew that the day would come when it wouldn't be Sid that owned the privatized utility? It would be a Chinaman in Hong Kong paying out vast sums in dividends to presumably Hong Kong shareholders, whilst your water bill goes up and up. Water companies pollute more and more, and who knows, the same will be true of all of those privatized utilities. I know that the trains are owned largely by even foreign countries. We have the absurdity where some of our train lines are owned by nationalized train companies in foreign countries. How's that for privatization? So you can vote Labour or Tory as long as you accept that all you're going to get is privatization. You can have a health service. Tony Blair's very honest. He's a very honest man, Blair, in one manner of speaking. In one way, he is. He openly said this week there should be a basic health service for the likes of you. Whereas the good health service, the better health service, should be for the likes of him. And he shouldn't have to pay tax to provide a basic health service for the likes of you. So you'll get, just like we had in the 1930s, a basic health service for you. In the 1930s, before Nye Bevan, healthcare was provided by charities, if you were lucky. But I'll tell you what, even in those days, if you went to an A&E, you wouldn't be lying on a trolley for 15 or 16 hours before anyone could see you. You wouldn't be waiting on a waiting list for years for essential treatment. But that's what we've got now in a national health service, starved of funds, top heavy with managers and administrators and blood-sucking private companies, ripping off the taxpayer, ripping off the patients, ripping off the workers in the health service for their own private profits. And guess what? In the next election, you can vote for that, or you can vote for that again by voting for the other party. Both parties are committed to exactly the same path of privatization and a second-class health service for working people. That's what they call democracy in this country. You can have any color you like as long as it's black. And I've just seen it in action. It's a small matter, maybe, for some. But I sat in the House of Commons this week. I had a busy week. 3 times I spoke in the Parliament this week. But the time I didn't get called was on the smoking bill that went through the other day. You don't have to agree with me that it's invidious and tyrannical what they did, but the point is, both parties, big blocks of them, the whole House, hearing at the same time, agreeing with each other, in total. The bill will, I don't know if any of you are shopkeepers here, a fair chance that some of you might be. You're going to have to decide 7 years from now whether somebody's 34 or 35. If they're 35, you can sell them cigarettes. If they're 34, you'll be fined if you sold them cigarettes. They won't be fined, you will be fined because you sold cigarettes to a 34-year-old. That's going to be tricky in 50 years when you have to decide between a 75-year-old and a 74-year-old who's not allowed to buy cigarettes. That's the kind of madness that they did this week. But the point is that they did it together. Labour and the Conservatives are absolutely one party, a uni-party. That's what they call democracy in this country. The next day, much more seriously, they were together again. The whole House was packed to hear little Rishi Sunak denounce, it's one of my phrases that has stuck. He'll always be little Rishi Sunak to me. Sunak came to the dispatch box to denounce the Iranian attack which killed nobody on Israel last weekend. And Keir Starmer got up and in almost identical language denounced the same attack. Neither of them. It's unbelievable, this. neither of them even mentioned that the Iranian attack last weekend was the direct result of an Israeli attack on an Iranian embassy, as if it never happened. I was the only person to raise the obvious fact. Talk about an elephant sitting in a room that nobody mentions, that this all happened because the Iranian embassy in Damascus was destroyed by an Israeli attack. Well, they looked at me as if I was something the cat had dragged in. You see, they don't want people inside the bubble telling the obvious truth that they want to conceal. And they think or thought that inside that bubble they could talk their fake narratives and nobody would bust that bubble. And I'm there now to bust that bubble. And I want Yvonne Ridley sitting next to me in Parliament busting those bubbles. Ash called her a local lass. I want to tell you how local she is, though she might be embarrassed. We were in a hotel in Baghdad before the war, trying to stop the sanctions, trying to stop the war, and there was a fire alarm, and everybody had to come down in their night clothes. What were her night clothes? Tracksuit bottoms and a Newcastle United shirt 20 years ago. More than 20 years ago. Nearly 25 years ago, long before she was running for office here in Newcastle. That was her nightgown. A black and white Newcastle United top. Newcastle would be lucky to have Yvonne Ridley as their Member of Parliament. Rather than, who is this person? I mean, I can't say the name, so I'm not going to try. Who is this person that you're all talking about? Sheen. Well, look, I've honestly never heard of her. I've never seen her. She's never impacted on British politics at all in all of my lifetime. I've never heard of her. She's a person of no consequence. Otherwise, I would have heard of her if she was a person of any consequence. She's a placeholder. That's all. She's a placeholder, picking up the money, filling her boots with a big salary and big expenses and doing what she's told. That's all she is there for. And now I must turn to the subject of the... Are you worried about time?
No.
Now I must turn to the main subject of this evening. I learned many things tonight. Yvonne's quotation from the traitor Ramsay MacDonald was quite startling. I'd never heard that before either, though you will hear me say it from now on. I'll try to attribute it to you. Labour and Zionism are twins. Sure, it was Balfour, the Conservative, that signed the declaration on behalf of one people, promising a second people the land that belonged to a third people. How's that for imperial folly? Britain didn't even possess Palestine at the time that it gave it away, but they did so with Labour support. And in fact, the Labour government of Ramsay MacDonald, just as the Attlee government of 1945, Clement Attlee, just as all of the Labour governments over the decades, all of them have been full-hearted supporters of Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people. That much is a matter of recorded history. Nobody could dispute it. But it went into overdrive when Tony Blair became the leader of the Labour Party. Then it became an article of faith that you must join the Labour Friends of Israel. Imagine people who claim to be socialists signing up in their droves to an organization in support of an apartheid state, ethnic cleansing, periodic massacre, decade after decade, guilty of the gravest crimes against humanity. But you don't get on in the British Labour Party unless you sign up as a friend of that. I call them the Labour Fiends of Israel. And I always claim, oh, it's a misprint, I just missed the R out. Labour Fiends of Israel, that's what they are. Because you would have to be a fiend to support what's happening right now, this minute, in Gaza, in Jerusalem, and in the West Bank. And in Lebanon, actually, where they're also killing Palestinians. The crimes, again, as Yvonne put it, are the most documented, but most denied genocide in history. But herein lies Labour's problem. I came here today from Rochdale. I attended 2 Jummah prayers in different parts of the constituency. Everybody there knows everything that is happening on a daily basis in Palestine. Thanks to our mobile phones, thanks to our social media. Even though the television refuses to report it, even though the papers report it and distort it, everybody knows. And that's Labour's problem. That's why they are in such terror about the forthcoming elections, local and national, because they know that we know what they did, what they said, the green light that they gave, the cover that they gave, for crimes so grave, they begin to compare with the crimes of the fascist Holocaust of the 1930s and 40s. This very day is the anniversary of the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto, when the Jews trapped in the ghetto in Warsaw, surrounded by fascists on the other side of the fence, fearing that they would all die singly of typhus, of hunger, of lack of water, of sickness and disease, decided that it was more dignified to rise up and die on their feet than to die singly on their knees. These brave Jews rose up and sought to overthrow the fascist guards around their ghetto, and we rightly, this night in a mosque, salute their memory as brave heroes who decided to die with dignity, and they died in their thousands. What's the difference between the Warsaw Ghetto and Gaza? There is no difference at all between them. What's the difference between the Israeli fascist guards surrounding the world's biggest open-air prison and the beasts of Hitler surrounding the ghetto in Warsaw? Tell me, anyone tell me, what's the difference between these two things? And therefore, what's the difference between the brave Jews who rose up against their jailers and the Palestinian resistance who rise up against their jailers? Tell me what the difference is. Why is one a hero and the other a villain? Why is one a hero and the other a terrorist? The terrorists are the jailers who have kept the millions of Palestinians, generation after generation. Yvonne, think of this. The children that we saw and gave little teddy bears to all those years ago, their children are now being killed. 2 days ago, 11 children were murdered in a school playground by a rocket fired by a drone made in Britain with Labour and Tory support, made in Britain and sold to Israel. It fired the rocket. It killed 11 children. My daughter here, there in the corner, children her age were murdered. I can't look at her without thinking of them. I can't look at them without thinking of her. Aren't you the same?
Yeah.
These children look like our children. They could be our children. But for the grace of God, they are not our children.
They are our children.
They are our children. They are our children. They are our children. Most of you know about the 11 kids 2 days ago. Hardly anybody knows what happened the next day. 4,000 embryos were murdered in the Gaza Strip's only fertility clinic. 4,000 in one bomb were destroyed. Every one of those was a viable child. Somebody's precious child that they may have waited years and tried so often to conceive. 4,000 children wiped out by one bomb in one strike. Where's all the pro-lifers? Where's all the anti-abortion campaigners? Where are all those people that tell us life begins at conception? 4,000 babies killed in one instant. These crimes are almost beyond compare. But the difference is, when the Nazis were murdering the Jews in the Holocaust, our country fought against it. Our men went to war against it. We blockaded Nazi Germany. We made alliances with the United States, with Soviet Russia, to defeat it, and defeat it we did. In this Holocaust, we are on the side of the genociders. We protect them in the United Nations. We sell them weapons. We denounce the people who protest against it as hate marchers and all the other things that they have called you and called me. That's a big difference, you know, to go from being the country that stood against genocide to being the country facilitating, enabling genocide. Shows how far we are reduced as a country, as a people, as a society. To go from having a media that highlighted the horrors of the concentration camps to having a media that glorifies the people who hold the Palestinian people in incarceration in the worst possible circumstances is a measure of how far we have come. At the United Nations yesterday, a motion to admit the state of Palestine into the UN was vetoed by the United States. Yes, but Britain abstained, just like this, whatever her name is, abstained on the ceasefire motion in Parliament, abstained on the solution, if it is a solution of a crime that has lasted for so long now, inevitably, because of prayers, I must close. But I don't want to close without referring to an epic election that will take place before Yvonne Ridley's epic election. It's in the Wingrove ward, where the chairman of this mosque is standing as an independent candidate, Yunus Muhammad. It is vital. It is vital, Yunus. It is vital that he wins, because if he wins, it will be the springboard for her winning in the general election in Newcastle Central and West. Brother Yunus, I've nicked all your time.
You've nicked all my speech as well.
Please welcome the next councillor for the Wingrove ward, Yunus Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. And good evening.
You know what I mean.
Now, where do I start? I've been given the hardest task this evening of following Yvonne and then following my Almighty. I've never, ever, ever heard so much absolute truth told in one place. I, as a chairman of this mosque, had 2 months ago said that no political movements in the mosque. I made the rule. I made the rule. And about a week before the election nominations, my best friend and I were sitting in someone's house answering a bereavement, and we came out and he said, "Please, you stand." I said, "For God's sake, I don't want to get involved in politics." I said no so many times that I convinced myself, did I say yes? I honestly didn't want to get into politics if it wasn't for Palestine. From the 7th of October to this day, believe you me, I've never watched the news because it makes me cry. Every time I watch the news, I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, and every time I think those could have been my kids. Those children, there's one item I saw, and I wake up in the middle of the night. I think you've all seen it. A young child being shot in front of a hospital, and people who were going to help him, they all got shot. So how can you say no to saying enough is enough? My parents, my grandparents, our family came to this country in 1939. In 1939, we, without opening our eyes, voted Labour. And we were told by our fathers, we are working class, son, we have to vote Labour. And the same Labour tells us we can't say no to genocide. We cannot say no to genocide. How on earth can you live and accept the stories that you hear? And please just close your eyes and figure out, would you say, no, I will still vote Labour?
No way.
I used to, as a young student, I used to go around door knocking for Labour. I used to think, this was from time of Harold Wilson, and so it gives my age away. So what I want to say here today is please, if we want to get Yvonne elected, we've got to get ourselves sorted out first. Chandni's here, who's standing in Heaton as an independent. I think Roshan is here. I haven't seen him yet, but Roshan is here, who's standing in Arthur's Hill. We are all standing against voting for the main parties. For God's sake, say no to these parties and develop something new, something great, something that you can trust, something that we all can trust. I'm not a politician. I don't want to be a politician. I've seen how he's aged. I'm only 2 years younger than you. I don't want our children to grow up being told, if we cause genocide, you have got no right to tell us that we're causing genocide. For the sake of these children, I want to stand up and say, no, please vote independents. I don't care who they are, as long as they stand for the truth and as long as they stand for justice, please vote independent, and we will always stand for Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Model Eunice. And just to close up, because the Azan is about to be called any moment, I would just like to thank everyone once again for attending and joining us this evening. Special thanks to our wonderful speakers, Arshad, Yvonne, George, Shamal too. I'd like to extend further thanks to today's team that consists of Sully, Shab, Izzy, Sadia, Roli and Zami, and of course the FOA volunteers. We have a FOA Palestinian merchandise stall at the back, so do have a look. Well, actually don't have a look, just buy lots of stuff. I don't want you to look at it, we want you to buy it. In regards to Yvonne's campaign, I don't mean to be rude, but what's with all this if we win? If. It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when we win. If you would like to get involved in Yvonne's campaign, at the reception desk we have a data capture form, so please feel free to leave your details and we will be in touch. And I think that's about it. Good luck to all the candidates running in the local elections coming up. All the best. The independent candidates, I mean, not the Tories or the Labour people. Thank you very much. Good night, God bless.